Welcome, as I said, and we're so excited to have you here. My name is Trey Smith, and I am one of the co-facilitators tonight. I teach K to 8 digital literacy here in Philadelphia. I'm joined here by Javea and Lisa. We're all Philadelphia Writing Project teacher consultants. We're all teachers in the school district of Philadelphia, and we are all part of a team in the Philadelphia Writing Project that is working on developing curriculum resources, but also doing professional development around using primary sources, historical primary sources, digitized by institutions like the Library of Congress, and then trying to pair those with resources developed by the National Writing Project to support young people in writing arguments and being civically engaged with their argument writing. Tonight, we are probably a little ambitious. What we're sharing are ongoing inquiries as practitioners. Me, for instance, I think we're all sharing units that are in progress right now. So we're not sharing a finished product. And I'm coming to you with some questions about what I'm doing because I need some help selfishly planning. But we think that this approach of using primary sources with College Career and Community Writers Project resources from the National Writing Project, how is that powerful, and what are we doing with it, and what questions do we have? We are going to be highlighting some example sources we're using. We're also going to highlight some routines. A lot of that work is going to happen in breakout rooms later on. And then we're going to try to encourage some conversation in the second half, both in the breakout rooms and then when we come back from the breakout rooms about how and why is this really beneficial and a good thing to be doing. So I'm going to turn it over to Javea to talk a little bit about an example, and then we'll talk a little bit more about the specifics of the project.
So this summer we tried this out, and we had some specific curriculum where we were really pairing the primary sources with current events. And what we started with, and this was an 8th grade class, we had students from all over West Philadelphia, and they were from all different schools. And within the 8th grade class during our literacy block, what we did was look at first historical documents from when Frank Rizzo was the police chief of Philadelphia. And at that time, there was a student protest. And what they did is, it was in, 1967, their demands were, or what they were requesting, is that they wanted to have more African-American history taught in school, as well as more teachers of color in the building. And they peacefully had a protest, but instead the police chief at the time had the police come and the children were beaten. So, and in response, the families of the children decided to bond together and do a peaceful protest, but financially. In Philadelphia, there was, in Chestnut and Walnut Streets are like popular shopping areas at that time. So what they did is they said, we're not going to spend our money. And this was during Thanksgiving and the holiday time. So since they didn't spend the money, then that affected the businesses. And then there was pressure to basically to take a look at better practices and what Frank Rizzo was doing. So what we did then is turn that into, we took that to the now, and we were able to then understand why so many people wanted to remove the Rizzo statue, which was directly across from City Hall in Philadelphia. So being able to unpack that with the students and figure out why that, what the history is behind it, and then take a minute to write and think about how that was happening. This is some of the writing that we did. So on the left-hand side, it says, this is a student that at this beginning of the week, and you can see that he's summarizing what he's learning, as well as beginning to argue the issues that are relevant today. And he's starting to make that move in his writing through his argument writing. On the second side here, this is a student that this is towards the end of the week now. Now we're getting into some of the practices of a kernel essay. And so she's laying it out and designing it differently. First, she thought this, then I learned, and then now what do I know? So we're able to see how she's working that out within her writing. And this was just the first week. Then they got really excited. So they were thrilled. They're like, what else is there that we don't know about? So that really set the tone for the summertime. And it was so good that it was our first week, because it was a 6-week program, that means that we were going to do 5 more weeks of writing in the summertime. So we had to find something that was really going to speak to them, but also give background information and then be able to think about that and challenge it, think critically, but then also how am I reflected? How is my writing reflected?
Thanks so much, Javea. And I think this example from the summer really highlights the importance of thinking about young people. I mean, it's in our question here, right? How have children historically partnered with one another, with adults for change in our community and beyond? And this is a question that undergirds our entire project, even though this was for a specific week in the summer. And what we are hoping to do with the curriculum work that we're doing right now with a team of about 12 teachers currently in the school district and in the Philadelphia Writing Project is to think about how can we bring together, how and why can we bring together historical primary sources, not just from the Library of Congress, but we have a grant now from the Library of Congress to do this work. So we're going to incorporate primary sources from the library. And then we have some really strong text sets, but also routines and approaches to supporting argument writing from the National Writing Project that we know can really support young people in improving and enhancing the argument writing that they do. And then we have another piece to the work that we're doing right now, which is to do that planning with a really emergent and exciting framework that's been provided by Dr. Goldie Muhammad in her book, Cultivating Genius. And we're writing curriculum, but we're also trying to capture student work and capture our own questions as teachers about what are the affordances, what are some of the challenges, and also what are some other possibilities. And we're doing this right now this spring, and then we'll be working with teachers in the summer, both at the summer program that Javea just talked about in West Philadelphia, but also with teachers in our Invitational Summer Institute. And then we're hoping to continue this work on into next year as well, to have more teachers add to existing curricula and also add their own sets.
So what we want to do, and the curriculum that we build is going to have these 5 pursuits. They're from Cultivating Genius, which was written by Dr. Goldie Muhammad. And that's really like what we're using as our bit of our framework. So definitely we're going to incorporate that there's identities of our own and those of others. We want to make sure that we're including skills that are part of the work that they're doing in the disciplines, whether that be ELA, social studies, STEM, any of it. We want the intellect where there's key ideas and context. Criticality, which allows the students to involve examining and changing the world. And most importantly, and my personal favorite, is joy. Seeing joy in others, how others live, and joy in your students and for their learning. So these are the 3 stances that we draw upon as well. So we first start with that arguments are all around us. We can and should add to ongoing conversations, especially things that we talk about. Arguments are not simply pro or con or for or against. There's multiple perspectives on one topic. And we also like to hear all of the voices that are contributing to that topic. And finally, that argument writing involves making moves with claims and evidence. And what we're trying to do is learn to strengthen those moves, to strengthen our own argument. So we'll use the Library of Congress teacher page and primary source set, which just a personal shout out, it's wonderful. Chronicling America, the historic newspapers, the TPS Teachers Net, well, they're all wonderful. I can't even sit here and pick one. The TPS Teachers Network, the American Archive of Public Broadcasting, and the Congress.gov.
So I want to jump in here. So we had those 3 different buckets, and we have been part of webinars around each of those different resources. One thing that we're trying to do in putting them together is to try to think about a very particular kind of argument writing. And we sometimes when we describe our project to other people, and our project is sort of new here, we get a reference to, oh, you should go look at the National History Day resources. There's a lot of information about writing arguments. And I am familiar with them, and they're great. And a lot of times those resources, and especially resources in history education, are about trying to understand the importance or impact or causes of a historical event. That's great. That kind of argument writing should be and is happening in classrooms. But for our project, we're not trying to, re-argue Brown v. Board. We're not trying to, figure out the different perspectives of the 3/5 compromise. We don't want students to necessarily take up, old historical arguments unless they're in service of helping us understand what are we trying to say today about some current contemporary discussion, right? So we know that whatever discussions are happening today have historical roots. The arguments we're trying to make, though, aren't necessarily about, the importance of a specific historical event, though. And so we're trying to do our best to articulate that and share that, because when we say argument writing, there are all kinds of initiatives and programs out there where we're trying to support students in arguing. They're all great. We're trying to do a move here where we're thinking, yeah, let's look at some historical documents, but the pivot that we're doing is to say, and we think those historical documents give us entryways, portals into what's happening today, something that we want to continue to, or that we want our young people to participate in a conversation about. And that's what I think C3WP from the National Writing Project does. Students are typically writing op-eds or some other text that would be introduced into our current discourse. And so this is just a slide and a piece of me trying to make clear of what we're trying to do. But I'm also curious about any feedback you have on this as we talk a little bit more as we move throughout this webinar. So let's pause now and actually do a little bit of writing and talking. I'm going to stop the recording in a moment, but I want you to think about some of the benefits that you imagine or that you've seen from your own practice, or that you think might be afforded in the example that Javea shared around bringing together historical documents, digitized photographs, newspaper articles, and then more recent sources. I know we talk about news articles in this slideshow a lot, but it's really any contemporary source that's part of an ongoing issue. So what do you think some benefits are of this? I ask you to maybe write a couple of notes in the chat, but don't send yet. Maybe just like write it down and draft something. And then in a minute or two, I can ask you to hit send. And then we can ask a few of you to unmute and talk about something you noticed or something that you shared.